Yeah, it's very cold. It's very cold in the Northeast.
My train shut down. They just got so tired.
I know, because I was working until 11 last night.
Oh,
God.
no.
So I got to have one of these wonderful moments. This happened before where everything looked like it was running fine. Google Maps was like telling me to take a different train than the one I usually take back up. So I still just do my normal thing because it was just like, I don't know why it's saying that. There were no delays listed on my regular train. So I go from the L to the 1. And the transfer for that is you have to walk a full block.
Right.
You get to do it underground, but it's a full block.
You get to. It's a treat. It's a nice little treat.
Yeah, you get to go through a completely unventilated hallway where a guy's always burning incense and there's a dude singing horrible covers of Beatles songs. Once you get to the 1, it's all construction right now. So like you can't, like there's no part of the platform you can even stand on. It's like one of those things where it's like, okay, I could just die right now. Like if I'm walking in one direction and someone else is coming the other way, there's not enough room for 2 people.
Oh, right.
Then I'm looking at Google Maps because like a couple of express trains are coming. And then it says that there's not going to be a 1 train for 45 minutes.
Great.
No delay listed, just that there won't be a train for 45 minutes.
Usually when it's that far off, they don't put that up on the board. It's just like a blank board with an advertisement for like the MTA or something.
There's no boards here.
I see.
There's no boards at the stop. There is a single like lit thing when you're coming down the full block long hallway to tell you that you're too late, but it shows only 1 train at a time. So it only showed the express trains that were coming up, and it's like 30 seconds between each little shift. Because it's one single line. So last time that happened to me, that was true. There wasn't going to be another train for 45 minutes. So I took the entire block back to the L so that I could go take it another stop, get on the A. And then I saw that the next L, after the one I'd gotten off, wasn't going to be there for another 20 minutes.
So what you're saying is that
and
you
the next
took an
A
L.
was also going to be there in 20 minutes. I didn't.
You took an L.
I didn't take an L.
You took a big L.
I took 0 L's because I went back up the stairs. I decided, okay, I'll go to the A now. So I'm not going to walk 2 blocks in the cold. I'm going to walk 1 block in the cold. Because I have to walk 4 blocks in the cold to get from work to the train.
Right.
Yes.
So I head back over to where the 1 line is, and then I'm going to go up, go a block over, get on the A, and then a 1 train is in the station. And I run down, and the doors close on my body as I'm getting in that train, motherfucker.
At least you got in.
Fucking pieces of shit. So I made it in. I didn't get dragged to my death by the 1 train like someone did 3 months ago. I'm unfortunately still alive.
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast that is unfortunately still alive. I'm the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Brians.
And I'm the worst of all possible Joshes. And this week, we have done so many bad things recently that I think we kind of needed a bit of a balm.
Yeah.
And we figured, why don't we do something that we like, or
We're
that Brian
talking
and
about
AJ
Hamlet again. A third time.
Third time Hamlet, the saddest Danish boy. We're back, baby.
We've heard your notes. We had a couple people specifically tell us recently, I love when you talk about Hamlet. Please keep talking about Hamlet, not even joking. So we're doing it again.
But not really. This isn't a Hamlet adaptation. This is a show that is near and dear to AJ's heart and my heart, and Josh hadn't seen it yet. A Canadian TV show that isn't Trailer Park Boys or Letterkenny.
Yes.
They made a 3rd show.
They did.
And it's called Slings and Arrows.
Slings and Arrows. Yes, Slings and Arrows. Sorry. This was a very formative show for me in college. I remember being shown, I saw like a grainy episode on YouTube because, this thing makes its way around theater departments.
Be on YouTube,
Yeah, it's one of these things that like, it's a rite of initiation. Like you go into your first acting class and you hear this whisper of, but you've seen Slings and Arrows, or someone will say, horses do not like fire. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they're like, you have to go check out this show. So I watched it on YouTube. I watched the first episode and it was so grainy and it was so hard to tell like who even anyone was. But
it was like uploaded in 2008.
Right, right. But the dialogue popped so much that I like ran to the local Sam Goody, because I think there was still a Sam Goody around. And
hell
I'm
yeah.
sorry, it was probably an FYE at that point.
No, it was a Virgin Superstore. I apologize. It was a
Oh my
Virgin
God,
Superstore in
we
Union
are
Square.
so old.
Yeah.
Fuck.
And I went downstairs and they had the box set. So I bought the whole box set of Slings and Arrows and I binged it, I think, in like the course of 2 or 3 days. And it just imprinted itself on me in a very, very real way. And it was actually really kind of shocking to me, Josh, that you had never watched the show before. I mean, I feel like it's one of those things that sort of permeates theater departments. And
I don't like theater people. I mean, I say that I hate theater people jokingly. Obviously, I am unfortunately one. And, having watched this show, it just confirms it even more for me that I'm like, I've still got the fucking bullshit romance and I hate myself for that. But the thing is, I obviously, Brian, we did theater together in college, and I did hate that theater program, and I hated a lot of the people in it. Not necessarily because they deserved it. Some of them did.
It was a bad time where no one was happy and no one got along.
I was extremely depressed. I was in the second worst depression of my life. That time for me is not a good time in my memory, and so I think that if I had a positive association with it, I probably would have watched the show at some point. But we're not here for Josh's therapy session. We're here to specifically talk about this show and what makes it interesting. And AJ, I think you have some background on like how this thing got made, right?
Yeah, sure do. So this thing was originally the brainchild of Susan Coyne, who is a very, I would say, famous Canadian playwright.
More like Susan Mint the Coin.
I mean, truly, in this case, 100%.
Yeah, and in this case, that coin is a loony and or a toonie.
That's right, Brian.
So Susan Coyne was originally developing this show, Slings and Arrows, which was originally very much based on the Stratford Theater Festival, which, if you are familiar with big
and you're
regional
not,
theaters.
So, Stratford
no,
Festival.
come on now. Some people might know it.
Yeah, but for the most part, no. The Stratford Festival is a festival in Stratford, Ontario, Canada. If you grew up in like the northern U.S. Midwest, you might have taken a trip there to see a Shakespeare play.
Especially if you're from like Buffalo or Eastern Michigan or even
Buffalo
West
is
Michigan.
the Midwest. And it's at the core of Canada's sort of theater world. They don't have a Broadway. They don't have a huge commercial theater scene. They didn't really have much of a professional theater scene in 52 or 53 when Stratford started, right? It was just a local journalist in Stratford who saw that steam trains were going out, which meant that all of the steam train-based industry of Stratford, Ontario was going out. And this man, who had never seen a play in his life, was like, well, we're called Stratford. We're on the Avon River. Let's do a Stratford Shakespeare Festival.
And what was that man's name, Brian?
Tom Patterson. He got the British director Tyrone Guthrie. They did Richard III with Alec Guinness, and they just got it up and running. And it's, they do somewhere around 14 productions a year. I think they do a little bit less since 2020. They have 4 permanent theaters. They have outdoor theaters. They have other spaces that they rent around town. And that's what the town is. It's a town that does the Shakespeare thing and mostly has very little else going for it.
Like if you do theater in Canada, like it is sort of the premier spot to go.
If you do acting in Canada in general, like most of the people on this show, including the people making the show, have had some hand in the Stratford Theater Festival. Right. Canadian actors who are famous in America, like Colm Feore, William Shatner, Brian Bedford, all of them were Stratford guys. That's what the Stratford Festival is. It is a true theater festival. It is something that has a repertory of plays that are done on a handful of stages. They switch stuff out night after night. The sort of thing that barely exists in North America at all.
They also have a true resident company, which is a really important part of what makes this show, Slings and Arrows, what it is as well. The people who've been with this company for years and years can actually make a fucking living in the theater because every year they're going to be back with the resident company doing another show. So most of them actually live in Stratford year round, because it's a place where you can be. And there really isn't anything like this in North American theater anymore.
No,
Yeah.
like in the US, if you get an apprenticeship at a theater company, you will never go back to that theater company in your life.
Correct.
Like there is
Yeah.
no preference for you whatsoever. There is no path for you to move forward and actually make money. Oftentimes you pay them because it's an opportunity. It's a complete fucking sham. But a place
Right.
like Stratford, you can get an apprenticeship there and then you will work there the next year.
And you can work there and work your way through the canon because, Shakespeare wrote roles for pretty much any time of life that you might find yourself in. So with the theater festival, there comes a lot of drama and there comes a lot of strife. And then there comes a lot of like beautiful art that you sometimes make. And, Susan Coyne was like, what if we made that into a show? And originally this was going to be a half-hour comedy, but then Mark McKinney comes in when they get the producer over at Rhombus.
And Mark McKinney is an alumnus of the Kids in the Hall sketch show.
Also an alumnus of Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, which we have covered on this podcast
Not at the time
before.
he made this
Not
show.
at the time that he made this, but you might also know him if you watch Superstore, which is a workplace comedy that I think is very underrated. And it's a very sort of grounded show. And then Mark McKinney is playing a character that he's just made this outrageous vocal choice for. And somehow it works because he is such a tremendous, tremendous performer. But he comes in and he's like, this needs more room to breathe. So let's like actually expand this out to be an hour. Like, let's actually get into the drama of this. Let's take this thing a little bit more seriously, not just make it wacky hijinks. Let's like really dig into the art of this.
I think one of the original concepts of the show, they were calling it Saint Ratford.
Yes.
Like it was going to be like just satire on what Stratford is, the Shakespearean kitsch, the everything else. Whereas this has turned it into more of a, maybe not quite prestige drama, but sort of a serialized dramedy.
And it's not that it shies away from humor necessarily. It's just that that's not the point of it. Peter Wellington, who directed every single episode of the series, said that he absolutely refused to shoot the joke. Like the thing was not actually about shooting the jokes. It was about shooting the relationships between the characters. Then Mark McKinney brings on Bob Martin, who has had a lot of experience actually writing for television before. Around the same time, he was working on a show called The Industry, which was formerly called Made in Canada, which was an adaptation of Richard III set at a Canadian like CBC sort of situation. So it's like a Canadian film studio.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob Martin had a lot more TV writing experience, and the three of them get together and they just outline all 6 episodes of the first season. They write all 6 episodes of the first season, and then they shoot all 6 episodes of the first season at the same time. They shot it in block, which means that every scene that you see set in Richard's office over the course of all 6 episodes were shot on the same day.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
This is not normal. This is very unusual, but like you can see that this is operating on a shoestring budget.
Yes.
And this is how they're able to get it done. Bob Martin, it should be noted, has also become a prominent musical theater writer.
Yes.
Right as Slings and Arrows was finishing up, he worked on The Drowsy Chaperone, which then opened on Broadway. He has also worked on the musical The Prom.
Yes.
There
he
are a
wrote
few
the-
others, but those
okay.
are the ones that people would know out of all of them. Of course, The Prom was made into a movie by Netflix with James Corden.
And I think
Favorite
Bob
person.
Martin adapted his book into the screenplay, so he also has credit on that. I also found out that Bob Martin's wife's name is Janet Vandergraff, and I think that's very sweet because that is a character's name in The Drowsy Chaperone.
Too bad he had to marry a Dutch, but that's
We can't all be perfect. So
Somebody had to marry me. Fuck you.
So they get Canadian, basically acting royalty to be on the show. They get
Yeah.
Paul Gross to come on to play Jeffrey Tennant. They get Martha Burns to come on to play Ellen Fanshawe. Then they kind of populate the rest of the cast with like really big theater people. It gives an opportunity for a lot of stage people to like actually get some screen time, which I think is very lovely.
And they're not necessarily the most prominent theater people in the first season. You get bigger Canadian theater names in seasons 2 and 3 once they have a little bit more money.
Right.
Well,
and-
Not a lot more money.
The concept had to get borne out first, though,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, the pitch alone, let's do an hour-long format dramedy about the comings and goings of a Canadian resident theater company. That's not a pitch that's going to immediately sell. And
No.
yet they sold it, and they made
Yeah.
the fucking show.
yeah.
Like you have to remember, like in terms of Canadian TV, I mean, stuff like Trailer Park Boys became really big. Most adaptations of like Anne of Green Gables can get some big funding and have some popularity overseas, of course. But Canada itself is not a big country. So stuff like Trailer Park Boys was made for no money. That's why they did the fake documentary format. And this was made for no money because Canada has 30 million people.
It's a lot of land space and sort of a very small population.
Yeah.
But
I mean, the reality, to be really honest, Canada is just a petrostate that happens to be part of the Anglosphere. It's no different from a place like fucking Kuwait. It just happens that it's really big, and because it has sort of an American-style common law system of governance, everyone's like, yeah, you're great.
And just like Kuwait, they have a hockey team.
That's true, bro.
that is true. That is the thing we found out today.
That's right. We were exploring the state of international men's hockey right before we started recording. But yes, we might as well jump into recapping unless there's anything else that you wanted to say here.
I just also wanted to say that one of the other huge names that came out of this series and made her way into sort of more the movie sphere is a very young Rachel McAdams stars in this show.
Yep.
And, the writers conceived this to just be one season, like a one and done sort of season.
Oh, miniseries? Sure.
A little miniseries, because they didn't know if they'd be picked up for season 2, and they didn't really write a full series Bible for it after season 1. So this tells a pretty self-contained story, and I think that's why we wanted to cover it for today, and also just because we needed something nice. We needed something good and nice, especially after all that Odyssey. We needed something heartwarming and lovely, and something that reminds us why we love the theater.
Well, let's start then with our adventure in the Odyssey of the North American theater.
Best transition man in the business, Josh Borman.
Thank you. That's what they pay me the big bucks for. We go in and we start off here in a theater. It's a show about theater. We got to start off in a theater. This theater has no money.
Théâtre sans argent, which means theater without money.
There you go.
Did I say it right? No, fuck you.
And we meet one of our key players pretty much right away. This is a guy named Jeffrey.
Jeffrey Tennant, played by Paul Gross. And he is plunging a toilet. And the phones don't work because they haven't paid their bills. He is introduced with a very characteristic line of him. Well, the ancient Greeks didn't have phones and their theater did quite well. Jack off motion.
Right. Exactly. This guy is kind of a pill, and you get that pretty much from the word go. I just love that the whole series starts with him plunging a toilet.
We also get one of his little trademark phrases. He's being told everything is hanging by a thread, and he says he believes the best things happen when that thread is about to snap.
Yes. And it brings us into really what sets the tone for what this show is going to be. Right. He starts to do this brilliant monologue, and all of a sudden, things around him become theatrical. He's up on a stage, and he's surrounded by actors, and, he's talking about how big and beautiful and important the world of theater can be.
Yeah,
and
he talks about the storm happens.
Right,
think when we talk of horses that they appear.
Yeah, the plunger in his hand becomes Prospero's staff, and he becomes basically the Prospero of theater, right? He's using his magic to conjure all of these otherworldly things to the stage.
The bosun calls out, "Take to the topsail, lay her home!" But the ship is torn apart by Prospero's magic. The mechanism of his revenge is set in motion.
We're split! We're split! Farewell, my wife and children!
All lost! All lost! The lights churn and swell like
And then
the sea!
the lights blow out.
And we start with our seasonal theme song. Each season of this show has a theme song related to the main play of the season.
Cheer up, Hamlet, chin up, Hamlet, buck up, you melancholy Dane. So your uncle is a cad who murdered dad and married mum. That's really no excuse to be as glum as you've become. So wise up, Hamlet, rise up, Hamlet.
this feels very English television to me, actually, which I kind of like. This is, because it's Canada, it's like 75% American, 25% English.
Sure.
This part really is like, oh, this is fun, because it's also a way of easing us into the world of the show.
Right.
This is the bar that they'll always go to after shows. The guys singing at the piano are sort of our two like old-timey comedic resident actors. They both actually have English accents.
Yeah.
And
they're the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern kind of the company. And the thing was, when I saw the second episode of this show, I was so surprised to see the song hop up again, because I didn't realize they were doing it as a theme song. I thought it was just like, okay, this is the next scene.
Right.
Sure, the credits
we're in
are
the pub
playing
now,
over
yeah.
it, but yeah. Very, very cleverly done, and it's in universe. So we find ourselves at a rehearsal now for A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yes.
And it is the main stage production, or it's not quite, it's like the sort of early season main stage production because their main thing is going to be Hamlet. But
Yes.
right now, they're getting Midsummer up and running.
And this theater now is not the theater we were at the very beginning. This is not Jeffrey's broke-ass theater.
Yeah.
This is the New Burbage Festival set in the fictitious New Burbage, Ontario, which again is a stand-in for the town of Stratford.
Right.
And yeah, we're here with Oliver, the artistic director, and he is, doing his best. He's really. I don't know. He's not actually. No, he's not. He's gassed.
He's doing his daily. He's doing just the job at this point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's got some fights that he needs to fight, right? Like his leading lady, Ellen, she's unhappy with the quality of the production. She feels that her talents are not being correctly utilized. And based on what we can see, she's correct.
Ellen is a character portrayed through perfect Canadian shorthand. You know immediately that she's the biggest asshole in the room because she apologizes all the time.
Yes.
I was just watching this yesterday at work with a coworker who is Canadian, and she was like, "Oh, it's so good to hear all those stories."
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. Sorry for caring.
But the thing is, her note to Oliver, this is the interesting thing, she's 100% right.
Yes.
She's talking about this moment in the show where she's giving a speech and she's facing fully away from the audience, which is a bizarre and amateurish staging decision made by a director who isn't really...
who's not really there. He's directed The Dream, I think, 8 times before, right?
Yeah.
He's checked out pretty much artistically entirely.
His big note is just, can we get a couple more sound cues of the sheep?
Hey there, you are listening to a preview of a premium episode of The Worst of All Possible Worlds. If you'd like to listen to the rest of this, head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/worstofall. And you can listen to not only the rest of this episode, but our entire backlog of premium episodes, bonus episodes, and if you subscribe at the $10 tier, you will get an extra episode of the podcast every single month. Again, that is patreon.com/worstofall. Hope to see you there.